Welcome to the Property Buyer Podcast. Join me, Rich Harvey, multi-award winning buyer's advocate and CEO of Property Buyer, where we explore the world of real estate and help you make informed decisions about buying or investing in residential and commercial property. Our show features expert interviews, market insights, and practical tips for navigating the complex world of real estate. Whether you're a first-home buyer, a seasoned investor, or simply curious about the property market, our podcast is for you. Join us as we share our knowledge and experience and help you achieve your property goals. And it's great to be back with you again on another edition of the Property Buyer Podcast. Today, we'll be looking at the Melbourne property market. And now the Melbourne property market has seen quite a turnaround in sentiment as prices are now starting to lift again, rising 0.3% in the last quarter. Listing volumes are down 20% compared to the same time last year, making for very competitive buying conditions. Now, Melbourne has been named as Australia's most livable city and the 10th in the world according to the Global Liveability Index in 2022. It's got a beautiful, vast array of high-quality suburbs, and it provides an excellent opportunity for both home buyers chasing lifestyle and for investors seeking high capital growth. Melbourne's population is now over 5.2 million people and growing, and a recent statistical boundary change has meant that Melbourne now has a fractionally larger population than Sydney, so the rivalry between the two cities continues. Melbourne seems set for capital growth, but are the fundamentals strong? So to lift the lid on what's happening in the Melbourne market, today we have our principal Melbourne buyers advocate, Amanda Jones, with us. Welcome, Amanda.
Good morning, Rich. How are you?
Great, fantastic. Lovely to have you with us. Now, what we love to do at the beginning of our podcast is just a quick thought of the week. And the thought of the week this time is from Amelia Earhart, who says, "The most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is mere tenacity." What do you make of that?
It sounds like nearly every buyer I've come across, Rich. You just need to act, and you've just got to have the tenacity to keep on going and going and going until you actually find that property, that dream investment, whatever you're looking for. But you've just got to put one foot in front of the other.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, look, the other thing we'd like to sort of get stuck into is just a whole bunch of questions about the Melbourne market. So firstly, obviously, Melbourne was really, really severely affected by COVID in terms of the very severity of the lockdowns. But how has the market performed over the last 3 years? What have you seen?
Well, it's no secret that the Melbourne housing market has faced its fair share of challenges over the past few years, with up to 15 to 30% increases in house prices in some areas over COVID. And we also had a market that had a fear of missing out because we were locked down for 260 days. That didn't really help. But then in the last 12 months, we've also seen decreases in some areas due to 10 consecutive interest rate rises, the lowest consumer confidence in decades and continuous negative messages from the media, and a tightening of the lending restrictions. The Melbourne property market has faced considerable headwinds.
It has, yeah. Look, some of the stats that we can share with our listeners just about the last 12 months with Melbourne is that the market in terms of pricing has gone backward about 8.9%, but the rate of decline has really slowed. I mean, I think at one point it was down about 10 or 11%, but if you look at a 3-month period, Amanda, we can see that the market has actually gone up 0.3%. So it's definitely turned a corner, and I definitely think we're seeing that recovery coming in the market. And in fact, over the last quarter, if you look at what they call the hedonic index or the stratified hedonic index, looking at the bottom quartile, the middle half of the market and the top quartile, Melbourne has seen a 0.7% rise in property prices in the upper quartile. So obviously the more expensive and luxurious properties are certainly trading well. So what are you sort of seeing on the ground? What's happening with market sentiment out there as you go to opens and auctions?
Well, we've seen increases in property prices of 0.1% over the last month, and just in the last week, we've seen property prices increase by around about 0.3%. So there's a real upturn in the market. There's really large numbers of buyers and investors going through properties that open for inspections. And in talking with the local agents, they're starting to get more inquiries from vendors wanting to actually sell. So we have to remember too that the auction clearance rates give us a really great in-time indication of the mood of the Melbourne property market and property buyers and the sellers. And we are seeing really strong numbers around, 70% to 76% mark. I think this time last year it hovered around about 60 to 65%.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that auction clearance rate's a bit of a leading indicator, in my view, about where it is. I mean, the Sydney property market we're seeing clearance rates in the mid to high 70%, which is really back to the boom times we had during COVID, right? So, are you seeing really competitive bidding at auction? Are people really kind of got a bit of FOMO back in the blood?
In the last few weeks, they have, and I think with the media talking about immigration and the numbers that are going to be projected over the next couple of years, people do realise that they really do have to sort of purchase that property right now. So with limited stock as well, it's actually seen an increase in prices at auctions and for sale. Not a lot of stock, but there are a lot of buyers out in the market.
Well, it's interesting you raised that point about stock because, again, I'll just share with the listeners what's happening with the volume of sales and also the volume of listings in the Melbourne market. What we're seeing with sales volumes is that Melbourne is actually down 24.7% year to date in terms of the volume of sales. And that's pretty similar to Sydney, which is down 29%, and Brisbane's down 24% in terms of sales volumes. And the lack of stock is really helping to drive prices and support the market and underpin the market. And we're seeing that listing volumes in Melbourne are down 20%. In Sydney, they're down 18%, and Brisbane down 32%. So, yeah, with that literally with 20% shortage of listings, Amanda, that really makes for competitive buying conditions, doesn't it?
It does, and we have to look at before coronavirus too. Our population was growing at 120,000 people a year. And again, it's going to be looking at, 200,000, 250,000 probably in the coming years, year on year. Where are we going to house people? What's it going to do to the market? The best time to get in is actually now.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, yeah, I'm very worried about where we are going to house so many migrants, because if we're not building enough houses to house another 100 or so thousand people in Melbourne, it's going to be very, very tight. So
very tight. We don't have the infrastructure going out into the urban areas as well.
So tell us about the sort of standout suburbs in Melbourne that you think have been really good performers, and perhaps give us an indication of why you think they've been standout performers.
Okay, so number one on my list would actually be Caulfield. It's got a healthy median price of around about 1.8 mil. You're looking at around about, for a unit, 630,000. It's around about 10 k's from the CBD. It's probably one of the best serviced suburbs in Melbourne with tram and train networks. So you've also got surrounding areas like Elstonwick and Glen Huntly. And I think one of the reasons why this has actually had a more interest probably in the last 6 months, Caulfield, is parking's getting harder and harder in Melbourne CBD. So people are wanting transport, easy access to the city for work when they do go to work. You've got large blocks of land there as well. You've got restaurants. You've got shopping strips, you've got all the things that you actually need. So Caulfield's a really great little area. And then there's also Cheltenham and Hyatt. The median price in both of those areas is around about 1.1 million, with the median unit price of around about 550,000. Cheltenham is a gentrifying sort of bridesmaid suburb in the Bayside suburb, and it sort of neighbours Hyatt as well. But both suburbs enjoy proximity to Southland Shopping Centre and also the beach. It's around about 19 minutes they're both 19 minutes from the CBD by express train. and both suburbs actually offer a huge range of excellent private schools and state schools, with some of the best golf courses in Melbourne. And then you've also got the adjoining suburbs of Parkdale and Mentone, which are great for investment.
Sounds like the infrastructure and that shopping and golf is a really lovely area. Are there any other suburbs?
From the CBD, it's one of the wealthiest suburbs in Melbourne. You're looking at a sort of a median house price of around about $3 million there. But it provides, great availability for downsizers, investors, people with money. It's got great schools. It's actually got 3 railway stations, shopping strips, beaches. It's got the lot. And then it's easy access to the Mornington Peninsula as well.
Excellent. Fantastic. Brilliant. So I guess just for our listeners that aren't familiar with the geography of Melbourne, Amanda, can you just sort of give us a bit of an auditory/visual picture, if we can, over a podcast of the various areas that make up the whole Melbourne market?
Well, the Melbourne market is huge, so there's quite a bit here. So we'll start with the CBD, which is the heart of Melbourne. Everybody knows that. You've got your skyscrapers, corporate offices, high-end shopping. You've got your key features, which is Flinders Street Station, which is iconic. And then we can go into the inner north, which is sort of characterised by trendy neighbourhoods, vibrant street art. And you're looking at suburbs like Brunswick and Fitzroy in those areas. It's a very bohemian sort of atmosphere around the inner north, and it has great shops, restaurants and nightlife. And then we go to the inner east, which compromises of the affluent suburbs. And, those affluent suburbs have beautiful tree-lined streets, grand Victoria era houses, great parks, known for their, elegance and charm. And these areas, include South Yarra, Toorak, Kew, Canterbury. So
they're the most expensive suburbs, right, in the entire Melbourne Basin?
They're the most expensive suburbs. If you're not in, also Brighton as well, which I'll get to in a minute, which leads on to the Bayside suburbs. And sort of Bayside is sort of categorised by anything that is on Port Phillip Bay. And it's known for its stunning beaches and coastal trails, very relaxed lifestyle, really charming little suburbs, affluent suburbs, great recreational activities. Again, we go back to golf courses, beach, but areas in those suburbs are Brighton, like St Kilda, Hampton, Sandringham, Beaumaris. So there's some of the suburbs in the Bayside area. And then we've got the southeast region, which is very, very, very diverse communities, a lot of commercial centres. It's home to several multicultural sort of neighbourhoods and shopping precincts. So you're looking at areas in the southeast like Chadstone, Mulgrave, Glen Waverley, Box Hill. So there's some of the suburbs in the southeast. And then we head down to the Mornington and Frankston Peninsula, which is located in the south of Melbourne. And this region is fantastic, and it's sometimes really overlooked. But it's got beautiful rural landscapes, got stunning beaches, you've got vineyards, really charming seaside towns. So you've got the Mornington Peninsula Hot Springs, Frankston, you've got great, state schools, zone schools, restaurants, large blocks of land, great little area, but Mornington Peninsula is probably one that people don't have on their radar.
Excellent. And tell me, I guess, of those areas, which are the sort of more affordable, which are the more expensive? Is there any sort of indication on pricing, median house prices you could give us in some of these areas?
Well, you'd be looking at, like in some of the areas, say in more affordable, like over in the northern suburbs of like Preston and Coburg, you can probably still get into a 3-bedroom house for around about 750,000. Block sizes can range from anything from 400 square metres to around about 500 square metres. So that's very affordable. You've got the infrastructure there too, a lot of trams, around about, 10 minutes from the city. So that's still very affordable. The Bayside suburbs are great, and the inner east 4 units. So you can still get 2-bedroom units for around about, 500,000 with really good rental yield of anything from $450 to even $550 a week at the moment, because we've got a real shortage of rental here at the moment. So we're screaming out for the properties and for the investors.
Interesting. Yeah, actually, that's really interesting you talk about the investors. We'll get to that in a minute, but I'd love to sort of just talk about let's talk about the top end of the market if we could, Amanda. And I'd love to get your perspective on what you would consider would be, say, the top 5 super prestige suburbs and why why they're priced that way.
So going back to the earlier question, I guess number 1 is Brighton. It's a suburb of, it's in the Bayside suburbs. Again, it's 11 kilometres from the CBD. It has the 3 railway stations, but if you're a family, it's got some fantastic schools, like some really, really good schools. And all of these areas too that I'm going to mention, people that actually gravitate to them, they sort of it's like attracts like. So they want that sort of postcode. They want the schools, they want the big blocks, they want all the trappings that come with the more affluent suburbs. The next one would be Toorak. It's one of the classiest suburbs in Melbourne. And it's got great leafy streets, beautiful mansions, stately mansions, great elegant eateries. And you're looking at around about 4.2 for the median house price. Wow. There.
It sounds like the Mossman of Sydney or the Vaucluse of the eastern suburbs in Sydney. It's the iconic picture of Melbourne. I just see these beautiful mansions with beautiful manicured gardens and everything. That's the picture I get of Toorak.
And then the next one I've got on my list is actually Hawthorn, and that's sort of known for its heritage architecture, and then it's sort of contrasted against elegant, really contemporary homes, and this is in the eastern sort of hub. Hawthorn has great fashion houses, great eateries, again, boutiques, art galleries. It's got museums, and it's, just a really great area for families. Again, it's got a real strong family appeal for young families. And it's got a really diverse art scene as well, vibrant parklands. You're looking at probably a median house price of 2.4 million there. So, it's probably around about 15 minutes from the city, 10 minutes from the city. And then we've got Middle Park. It's only around about 5 kilometres from Melbourne CBD. You've got Albert Park Lake. You've got MSAC Wave Pool. The streets are lined with beautiful period homes, and the median price there is around about 2.7 mil. It also encompasses other suburbs around that area like Albert Park as well, and Port Melbourne. And you could easily walk from there to the CBD. It doesn't actually take long, and it's probably around about 3.7 mil for the median price on the city fringe.
Brilliant. Okay. Is there any others you'd like to mention?
I love Armadale. I was about to Armadale. So Armadale's a really interesting suburb. It's a really tightly held suburb. So you'd be lucky if there might be 40 houses that come on the market every 2 years. It's got a lot of period homes. Again, it's contemporary. Fantastic shopping strip, fantastic restaurants. It's just it's just a stronghold. Really great capital growth. If you can get in there, you'll always see capital growth, and you'll also always see great rental yield. So Armadale would be my last one.
Fantastic. So Brighton, Toorak, Hawthorn, Middle Park and Armadale. Yeah, great selection there, Amanda. Well done. Love to also just talk again while we're still on the prestige topic. What are the kind of key features that these prestige buyers are looking for, do you think, when they're looking to buy a home in these types of suburbs?
Well, number one is always location, postcode, size and the layout, the architectural design, the craftsmanship, the high-end finishes and features, privacy and security. Outdoor space is really, really big after COVID for everybody, not just in the top end, but for everybody. Outdoor kitchens, pools, tennis courts, close to the beach, views of the CBD, all of those things. But again, it goes back to like attracts like, and people with money like to be close to people with money.
Exactly. Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, let's have a look at the investor market now, and just firstly, rents in Melbourne have certainly jumped up. The latest Core Logic figures are showing that Melbourne rents rose 11.6 year to date, and the current vacancy rate, as it stands in last month in April, is 1.2%. It's risen slightly from around 1%. But still very, very tight market. A normal market's around 2 to 2.5% vacancy, Amanda. So I think we're really seeing the rental market being very, very strong in Melbourne as well. But where are some good opportunities in the Melbourne property market for property investors?
So my general answer to that is any property, unit or house is good for any investor at this time right now in Melbourne, because as you mentioned, vacancy rate is so low, like so low. There are areas of, again, anywhere Bayside, anywhere that's in school zones. If you've got the money, be it a small deposit, be it a large deposit, put yourself into a unit. If you don't actually, have a big deposit, or if you're an investor just wanting to, sort of get your feet wet, units, just grab any stock that you can at the moment. That would be my advice to anybody. Because we've seen Melbourne apartments saw, 23.1 to 30% in the past year in some areas, leaving tenants struggling to find affordability or affordable housing or units anywhere. I think as an investor too, if you could look at houses that have, 3 or 4 bedrooms, for people with families that actually need to rent, they need to be in those school zones. They don't have that money for the deposit. They're probably going to be really long-term tenants for you if you can get them into a school zone. So that's where I'm sort of seeing the market at the moment.
Okay. So talking about apartments versus houses, Amanda, are there any locations you would say are no-go zones for apartments? Because I remember years ago, back when Docklands was first being touted and redeveloped, there was a serious oversupply for a period of time and we saw prices drop. But are you seeing that there's just such a lack of supply that any apartment's good? Or what would you say that in that apartment versus house debate at the moment?
In Docklands at the moment, it's really good to rent. So if you invested there or bought 5-10 years ago, you're fine as an investor. The problem is buying a property there now. They're filled with cladding.
Yep.
So I wouldn't recommend any of my investors to actually look at that area. They can't sell the properties. It's a minefield. So that is the one area that I just would not look at.
Because they're just to clarify, because it's flammable cladding, you're saying?
That's right. That's right. And, some buildings have actually been rectified, but there are a lot of buildings there that haven't been, and some banks won't even look at any buildings that even have, 1% of cladding actually left on them to actually loan to an investor. So there's all those sorts of things that we have to look at as well.
Okay, excellent. All right. Now, I'd love to sort of just get some ideas of what you've been recently buying for your clients as a buyer's agent. What sort of feedback did you get, and what sort of properties have you bought for your clients in the last 3 to 6 months, Amanda?
So the last property I bought last week was actually a 5-bedroom property in Frankston South in the Frankston Secondary School Zone. I purchased that for a Sydney couple who wanted boots on the ground here, and we purchased that for $950,000. they're looking at an expected rent of around about $750 a week. And that's only going to increase because on the market at the moment there's actually no 4 to 5 bedroom rentals in that area, and it's on a really good size block as well, on 750 square metres. So they've got options in the future, maybe to develop if they wanted to, if somebody wants to buy it off them for a development. But it's just an area that's got really solid capital growth, and is going to see very, very strong rental yields in the future.
Excellent. Okay. And what are some other ones you've bought recently?
I just bought for a lovely lady that was buying from Vietnam, Australian resident, but she's based herself in Vietnam. She wanted a property that was unique, and the uniqueness would actually give her that capital growth. She wanted a good rental yield. So we actually decided to buy a property in Aspendale, which was right on the beach. So you walk out of her property and you are on the sand. There's only probably around about 300 properties in Melbourne that actually you can walk out onto the beach. So it's one of those properties that year on year on this part of Aspendale consistently gets, 8 to 12% per annum growth, always. So we bought for 3.8 mil, just a great little area, and she wanted something unique that would actually give her the capital growth.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Now, you deal with a lot of different buyer types, right? You look after home buyers, investors, expats, locals. Is that right? You've got quite a mixture of clients that you've worked with in the past.
All very diverse, from the investor to the first home buyer to the family that's upgrading for more bedrooms.
So, Amanda, what kind of buyers do you work with? Give us a bit of a range and a flavour for the types of buyers you're working with.
So, Rich, I'm working with investors and I'm working with first home buyers, and I'm actually working with people that are, in the market and they're upgrading because of children. So I touch everybody who's actually looking for properties in Melbourne. It doesn't matter whether it's the investor or the home buyer.
Brilliant. Okay. And Amanda, a tricky one for you. If you had, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but if you had $1 million to spend in the Melbourne market right now, where would you invest and why?
If I had $1 million right now, I would probably buy in Frankston South. I'd try and get myself a 4-bedroom property on a good block of land. Or I'd probably buy a couple of 2-bedroom units closer to the city for around about $500,000. So I'd sort of hedge my bets if I had $1 million, because there's a few ways that I could actually go. But it would either be two units, 2 apartments, or it would be a nice sized block in Frankston or over in Ringwood too. Ringwood's a really good area, in Croydon. Again, you can get probably a 3-bedroom house for around about $800,000. Good rental yield over there, and the blocks are huge, and it's not far from the city.
Yeah, I do. I like Ringwood. It's got a bit of a rural feel to it. It's really lovely, a tree-lined area, really nice. There's some good ideas, Amanda. Fantastic. And look, before you go, I can't let you off the hook without asking this question. What's your best piece of property investment advice that you could offer to our listeners today?
Buy now. We've got an influx of immigration coming through. Again, my thoughts are, if you've got a little bit of money, as I always say to my son, who's 32, if you've got that little bit of money, put it into a unit, start a portfolio. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of money to start something. If you are in the market for a house, sometimes the best property that you actually see is the first one. And sometimes we can't compare, a long list of 5 or 10 and then sort of backthink or backtrack that we should have done something. So if you've got the money, do it now. The market's going to move a lot in the next 3 to 6 months, and people will be kicking themselves.
Well, that's fantastic, Amanda. It actually comes back to our thought of the day, which is the most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is mere tenacity. I think that ties in nicely with our podcast today. So,
That's
Amanda,
very, very huge.
Thank you so much for your input. That has been absolutely brilliant today. Just if anyone's listening and you do have a question for us, just remember there on your screen, you should have a speak pipe, and you can just press that button and record your question, which we will get to in the next episode. So we'd like to make this as interactive and really get in touch with you and understand what your concerns are and answer your questions. So please click on the speak pipe, send us your question. We'll get to it next episode. And if you'd like to get in touch with Property Buyer or Amanda, just go to our website, propertybuyer.com.au, and we'd love to chat with you and help you progress your property portfolio and your property dreams. So Amanda, thanks again. Really appreciate your input.
Thank you very much, Rich, for having me.
Pleasure.
Always love talking to you.
Great. And thank you everybody for listening. And we look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Property Buyer Podcast. Bye for now. Well, thanks for being with us on the Property Buyer Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions or would like further information about buying property, please visit propertybuyer.com.au and we'd be delighted to help. We have loads of free resources and market updates and recent articles for you to explore. We look forward to joining you on another episode very soon. I'm Rich Harvey. Thanks for listening.